Here's a question that sounds super simple on the surface, but it pulls us deep into biology, philosophy, and even how we define life itself. The question is, do plants feel pain?
Okay, be honest. We've all had this thought, right? You're mowing the lawn and you get that smell of fresh cut grass, which, by the way, is actually a chemical distress signal. And for a second, you wonder, is that plant experiencing this? Is it feeling something? Well, let's dig in and find out.
So, to really tackle this, we have to start with the basics. Before we can even ask if a plant feels pain, we need to get on the same page about what pain actually is, from a scientific point of view. And here it is, the official definition. Now you got to pay close attention to the wording here. Pain is defined as an unpleasant sensory and emotional experience. That second part is absolutely the key. Pain isn't just a physical signal saying, ouch, damage here. It's a feeling, an actual emotion that gets processed.
Right. So to have that emotional feeling, you need a specific biological toolkit. Think of it like a three-part system. First, you need nociceptors. Those are the specialized sensors that detect harm. Then you need a nervous system, which is kind of like the wiring that carries the signal. And third, the most important part, you need a brain to receive that signal and turn it into the conscious feeling we call pain. If you're missing any one of those pieces, you just don't get pain as we understand it.
All right, so now that we have our definition locked in, let's pivot to the world of plants. We obviously know they get damaged. So what exactly happens inside a plant when a leaf gets torn or a stem is cut? Does it look anything like what happens in an animal?
And honestly, this is where things get really, really cool. Because while the science says plants don't have the hardware to feel pain, they are absolutely not just sitting there and taking the damage. Their response is immediate, it's incredibly complex, and, well, it's kind of dramatic.
Okay, so picture this. The second a caterpillar chomps on a leaf, it's like a silent alarm goes off. The broken cells release these chemical signals called damps. Those signals kick off a chain reaction, waves of electricity and calcium ions that shoot through the rest of the plant. This is basically the plant's internal warning system, telling all the other parts to prepare for an attack. And that warning activates hormones that can do things like produce nasty toxins or start repairing the wound. It's wild.
So what you're seeing here are two totally different solutions to the exact same problem: how to survive damage. Animals, we have a centralized nervous system, and we have the option of fight or flight. We can run away. But plants can't do that. So they evolved this incredible decentralized defense system where basically every cell can be part of the response. It's not fight or flight, it's more like hunker down and defend. Just two different, brilliant evolutionary strategies.
Okay, so when you see a system this complex, this responsive, you can't help but ask the next big question. If a plant can sense what's happening, react to it, and even send out warnings, where do we draw the line? Is this a form of intelligence, or maybe even consciousness?
And this is a tricky one, isn't it? Because it really pushes us to think about what smart even means. We tend to define intelligence in very human terms, having a brain. But what we're finding out is that plants have these sophisticated behaviors that will look an awful lot like intelligence.
Get this, there was this incredible experiment with pea plants. Scientists set it up so a fan would blow on the plants right before a light, their food source, was turned on from that direction. Over time, the plants learned to associate the feeling of the fan with where the food was going to be. Eventually, they started growing towards the fan, even when the light wasn't there. That's associative learning. That's something we used to think only animals with brains could do.
But, and this is a big but, we have to hit the brakes for a second. Biologist Lincoln Ties brings up a really powerful, super practical question that cuts right to the heart of it. He asks, what use would consciousness be to a plant?
And the logic here is, well, it's pretty solid when you think about it from an evolutionary standpoint. Having a brain and being conscious takes a ton of energy. For an animal, it's a worthy trade-off. Feeling pain and fear helps you escape a predator or get away from a fire. But for a plant, an organism that's literally rooted to the spot, what's the benefit of feeling the terror of being eaten if you can't do anything to stop it? Evolutionarily, it would just be a colossal waste of energy.
This idea isn't new. Charles Darwin himself pointed this out a long, long time ago. We look at a plant in the desert and we say it's struggling for life. But that's us putting our human emotions onto it. Darwin suggested it's way more accurate to just say it's dependent on water. It takes our feelings out of the equation and lets us see the pure biology of the situation. It's a really important distinction.
All right, let's pull all these threads together. We've looked at what pain is, we've seen the plant's amazing wound response, and we've waded into this whole debate around consciousness. So, after all that, what's the verdict?
This little scorecard breaks it down nicely. When it comes to the feeling of pain, that's a yes for animals, but a no for plants. How about a complex response to damage? A big yes for both. The ability to learn? Well, the evidence is surprisingly pointing towards yes for plants, too. But what about consciousness, that subjective, emotional experience? For plants, there's just no evidence to support it.
So, when you put it all together, the conclusion is pretty clear. Based on all the science, plants do not feel pain. They just don't have the biological equipment for it. But that doesn't make them any less amazing. If anything, understanding this silent, complex, and incredibly responsive world they live in should make us appreciate them even more.
You know, it's probably worth taking a step back here for just a second. When you think about it, whether we're looking at another person, our dog, or a plant, we can never truly know their inner experience. All we can ever do is observe their actions, their outward expressions, and make our best guess about what's going on inside. It's a good reminder to stay a little humble about what we think we know.
And that really leaves us with one last, kind of mind-bending question to chew on. If plants can have this rich, complex existence, sensing, learning, reacting, all without anything close to what we call feeling, it just makes you wonder, doesn't it? What other completely different forms of existence are out there, all around us, that we haven't even begun to understand?